Okay, let's proceed to MSSQL Season 01, Episode 2. This is Introduction to SQL Server Management Studio and Creating Databases. In this video, I will discuss about the SQL Server Management Studio, or SMS IDE, most especially the query window. And in this video, we will try to create a database and we will try to execute some basic scripts. We will also try to connect to another SQL Server instance on another machine. Let us launch the SQL Server Management Studio. Click this. And you will be presented with this dialog. So you have to specify the server name, which is the computer name, comma, the port number, and the authentication type, either Windows authentication or SQL Server authentication. I am used to use my SQL Server authentication, and I have saved my credentials on this machine, so that's why it's already supplied. By the way, you can log in to this same server using its IP address. So let's try to check its IP address. So the IP address is 192.168.56.101. Let us use that here. 192.168.56.101, comma, 1978. Let's save the credentials as well. Click connect. And we're through. So it points to the same machine. So you can either use the IP address or you can use the computer name. In this case, the computer name is Paul PC. You can right click on that, properties. So you can use either the server name, which is the computer name, Paul PC, or its IP address. Okay, so I'll explain a bit about this IDE, or Integrated Development Environment. So here is on your left pane, you can see the connection to the SQL Server, and you can see here the databases available. For now, what we have are just the system databases. Please don't touch it. This is very important. It's like the registry in your Windows, so don't mess with these databases. Let's collapse it, and then security are your logins. You can create new SQL login in this. Server objects. You can see here your database triggers. Backup devices are here. Replication for multiple server instance. You can replicate data. It's good for disconnected environment. Management, you can see here the SQL Server mails. You can access it here. I would like to explain briefly the query window. So to create a new query, you just click this button, new query, or simply say Control N. Okay, I have a new query window right here. I'll just explain a bit. At the bottom, you can see that you are connected. And here, you are connected to this specific server, 192.168.56.101, port is 1978. Your username used is SA. And you are connected currently to the master database. And this is the elapsed time. Here are your available databases. So far, you only have system databases. We haven't created a database yet. So you can either choose this or you can simply say use master and then click execute or press F5. This is what we call the results grid right here, and this is your query editor window. Use model. If you execute that, try to take a look at this drop down. Now you are using the model database. This button right here is just to parse your command. It will not execute, it will just check for syntax if it's correct. These buttons, we will explore this later, as this is pretty much advanced for you to understand execution plans. So it's just a basic IDE. You can change your settings here in options. So we will explore a bit of this, like for example, the font size, the colors, and the default result set, because you can return the result in a grid or just the text or in a file or XML. So you can do that. And you can have another query window if you want to. Just click this. So I have two query windows. This one is connected to model database, and this one maybe I can use to connect to my master database. Execute. I have two query windows. The first one is connected to the model database, you can see here below. And this one is connected to the master database, so I can execute some scripts here. Let's say, for example, I would like to know the date today. Date today is this. Most of us are familiar with this type of IDE. Next, I would like to teach you how to connect to another SQL Server instance on another machine that is connected to the same network. All you need to do is just click this drop down, this, and then database engine. So we're trying to connect to another database engine, which is located in 192.168.56.1. The port number is this. I will save that password. And then I will click connect. Take note that you are remotely connecting to this specific machine, so it seems like you are sitting on that server. Any changes to this database will reflect on that specific machine. Let's say, for example, if you delete that database from here, it will actually delete that database on that machine, which is this machine. Just be careful. It's just like a terminal service. So as long as you have the right credentials, you will be able to connect to that machine. So let's try connecting to this database. Let's say, for example, I have here a database called IcarusDB. It's a user database, so I will create a new query for that. We are now connected to IcarusDB, as you can see here. You are connected to this machine, 192.168.56.1, port number, under the username SA. Okay, I will execute. Let's say, for example, it has IntelliSense, so it will help us accomplish our job a little faster. Click execute. And in your query window, you can have another script at the bottom. Now, you have two SQL scripts in your query editor window. If you click execute, those two scripts will be executed. This is for your first query, the select asterisk from TBL resident, and this is for your second query for the TBL payment. Now, if you want to just execute the first script, you just have to select it and then click execute. Now, if you want to select the first script, you just have to select the script that you want to be executed and then click execute or press F5 on your keyboard. Okay. If you have selected an incomplete statement, of course, it will throw an error. Now, if you want to disconnect to an existing server, all you have to do is just right click on it and then click disconnect. It seems like you are disconnected to another server, but then you still have an active window right here. This window is connected to 192.168.56.1, although you have disconnected here on your left pane, but this is still active. Let's try to execute. The query editor window is different. It's another connection. Here on your Object Explorer, that's another connection. So you actually had made two connections to the other server. One is via the Object Explorer and the other one is via SQL Query Editor window. It's still active. Okay, so you are still connected to the 56.1 database service. If you want to fully disconnect, you just have to close this. And that's it. You are no longer connected to 192.168.56.1 database service. Now, let's create a database for this server, 192.168.56.101. Here in your databases, you don't have user database yet. To create a new one, I should prepare the folder first. Right click on it, click new, and click folder. Let me copy the path so I can just paste it later. In here, you just have to right click on the databases, click the new database. Let's name it DB sample. And then here in the path, this is actually path. I want it to be saved there. Okay. And then it will ask you two files actually. One is for the database name, DB sample, and this is for the transaction logs. So I will explain that in the next series of videos. And most of the time, transaction logs grows larger in terms of actual file size compared to your database, because there's more action, there's more inserts and deletes and updates. Chances are log files are much bigger than the actual database itself. Click OK. We already have a database here, but it doesn't have database objects like tables. Will be covered in the next episode. Let's check our folder. The initial size is about 8 megabytes each. That's it. Very simple. In this episode, we have covered how to use the SSMS IDE or Management Studio, and we have covered how to connect to another SQL Server instance on another machine, as well as creating databases. For the next episode, we will be discussing briefly about database objects like tables, views, stored procedures, triggers, and other database objects. I'll just briefly explain what are those objects for. We will be designing a very simple table without default values, without check constraints, just a very simple table. We will cover that on the next episode.